Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, like for you guys in Europe. And I can see that we have some people from the US as well. So I think that's good morning, and good morning to you, Marty, as well.
Thank you.
I'm Tina Övel. I'm going to be your host today. And welcome to this meetup where Marty Gage will share his knowledge working with desired experiences. And yeah, as always, we are so happy to see that people still joining us online, even though I think a lot of people have a bit of Zoom fatigue. So that's great to see. And I hope that you have had a lovely day so far. And good day to you, Marty, as well. It's nice to see you here, and I'm looking very much forward to your talk.
Thank you.
So Marty is Vice President of User Experience Research at Lextant, and he's been working with design research since 1989. And you've also just written a book together with Spencer Murrell, User Experience Research.
Came out yesterday.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
I'm looking so much forward to reading it, actually. So I think we're going to include a link in all the material afterwards. So if people are interested in reading it as well, they can have easy access.
And I'll have a couple slides at the end about the book, and actually the stuff I'm talking about today is in the book as well.
That sounds great. Looking forward to that. So the agenda for today is that when I'm done with all the practicalities, Marty will start his talk. You can ask questions in the QA section here in Zoom, and we'll go through some of them at the end of the session. And we're also recording the talk today, and you'll receive a link to the talk during the next week, together with Marty's slides. And for those of you who do not know Preely yet, Preely is a self-service platform for unmoderated remote user testing, and we also host user panels. So if you are interested, feel free to reach out and hear the different opportunities that we can give you, and maybe also give you a demo. And I actually think that was it. So Marty, it's great to having you here, and I think just take it away.
All right, well, thank you very much. I'm super excited to be here, and it's great to get to speak to the people of Northern Europe and Scandinavia. I will start sharing my screen, and we will go. All right. So I'm going to talk to you about desired experiences. This word here, most of you probably have it in your job title, in your job description. But what does it mean? Do we ever stop and think about what this word means? We define this as the emotional outcome of interacting with something, anything, and we'll get into that. But how does it wind up making you feel when you deal with something? Now, these words, unfortunately, I only speak English, but I know many people that speak multiple languages, and I know there's the language you can speak, but there's a language you think in, and I think it's important. I wanted to show this way because I want everybody to really relate to it and think about it in their language in which they think. And hopefully I got them all here, and hopefully the Google Translate worked. I did not verify these translations, and we know how things can get really messy, especially when you put two words together. So you guys have to let me know at the end if this worked. An ideal experience is the emotional outcome people want, what they desire, what they wish for when they interact with something. So we're going to figure out how to break this down and talk about a framework that we use to dissect experiences down into their component parts. We call it the anatomy of an ideal experience framework. It starts with emotions, how people want to feel. You want relaxed, proud, free to be yourself, respected. Ultimately, that's how people want to feel. And this is a subset of those, certainly. The benefits that enable you to achieve that desired emotional state. You feel ready to take on the day, you're prepared, you're connected to family. There's many of these. Making the most of your time, getting things done. Then there's the features that deliver those benefits in a product, a service, an interface, whatever. It can be healthy, welcoming, intuitive, durable. And finally, the sensory cues. The sensory cues are the things that viscerally communicate that the features are there. You could say they communicate meaning. Sensory cues, suspended particles means that the formula could clean. A citrusy smell, for example. A good scent has meaning. The holes in that tent stake show that it's lightweight but strong because unnecessary materials were removed. These things up here look scientific. A progress bar can communicate things. And my camera's in the way here. And content can be short and to the point. There's a bazillion sensory cues. But these all come together to help you dissect an experience from how people want to feel, the intangible things, the benefits that enable you to feel that way, the tangible things, the features and that deliver those benefits, and the sensory cues that comprise those features. Additionally, everybody in an organization needs something different to do their job. Marketing needs messaging to tell the story, but to design or make something, you got to have this concrete stuff, the features and the sensory cues. And this is a way for it all to come together to connect what you make to how you make people feel. I'm going to give you a couple of examples here, and then we'll keep going. Okay, we've done cars, appliances, garage door openers, light bulbs, smart. When you add smart to something, what does it do for you? And there seems to be this universal framework of smart. The emotion, what does smart do for you? It just makes your experience more relaxing. What is it? What are the benefits that smart can provide? It can make you more engaged in what you're doing. It can make you be in control, help you get things done, keep you safer. And it delivers these things because it knows you, it knows what to do, it keeps you informed, it tells you what it's doing, it's trustworthy. And honestly, the other one up there, my picture's over it. Let me just a second. Oh. And I'm gonna get to it. So I'm back on this. So to sum it up, it's a unified system. So everything works together. So this breaks down smart. This one example does not get into sensory cues, but it shows you when you put smart in anything, this is what people want, how they want to feel, what they want smart to do for them, and how smart needs to show up and deliver these benefits in a unified system that's trustworthy, keeps you informed, knows what it knows what to do, and it knows you. Let's talk about another example. What I'm showing you works for everything. So, but I'm showing you some examples that I can share that don't violate confidentiality, and then we can share the deck with you out later. So think of a prepared food. It could be something frozen. It could be something that you buy that's ready to eat. But ultimately, you want that food to be delicious, effortless, and simple. You want it to be, it should be delivered in a way that's healthy, authentic, made with care, and real. And ultimately, when you sit down and eat it with the people in your household, you want to feel appreciated that you provided them a delicious meal. You want them to be satisfied, and you want everybody to be connected. So if we look at how you want it, let's look at made with care, for example. Made with care. The things that tell you that that food is made with care is it's taken time and effort, it's handcrafted, and it's a small batch. It's not mass produced. Handcrafted means it's imperfect and got a human touch. How do you know it's imperfect? Because it's got uneven charred crusts, perfectly imperfect details, imperfect size and thickness. It's got a human touch because it might have grill marks, looks like it's grown by people, and it's made from scratch. So here we've gone from made with care and broken it down to the sensory cues and the components that communicate what made with care looks and acts like in prepared food. So hopefully that communicates to you. As I said, ideal experiences, they connect what you make to how you make people feel. They're aspirational. They're based on what people wish for. They're actionable because you can get down into the minute details. And one of the key things is they look beyond the category of today. When you study the experiences of today, you see the world as it is today. When you study ideal experiences, you see the world as people want it to be. You see the category that you're in as the way people want it to be. Now, this is where it gets interesting. I assume that everybody out there is familiar with the design thinking process, but when you insert ideal experiences into the design thinking process, it changes. And the design thinking process, it's generic because you might be working on a mechanism. You might be working on some component of AI. There's many ways that it shows up. But when you push it through the lens of ideal experience, you begin to see something different. You're no longer defining empathy. You're defining value. you're figuring out what people want, what they value. And this gets to the hardest part that we see in most organizations, the most tricky part, alignment, getting everybody to agree upon things. Now you have to get companies to align on two things. Number one, what do people want? Aligning on what people want is truly challenging. But once you do that, then you can take the next step and align on what you're going to do about what people want. What are the strategic choices you're going to make based upon what people want? This enables you to focus creativity on what people want within the context of your strategy. What you prototype in this perspective on design thinking is experiences, how to communicate the experience someone would have with whatever your ideas are. And then that sets you up to measure value. And since your organization align upon what people value in step 2, you're now ready to measure value and measure what people want. So we sort of bookended the design thinking process now with the idea of value. So let's talk about how this comes together. This is a framework that describes an ideal sandwich shop. Ultimately, when you go there, you want to enjoy your meal and share your time with others, spend time with people. You want to feel satisfied. You want it to be satisfied. You want to be relaxed, and you want to feel appreciated by the people in the store. So now you start to break it down between the food and the place. The food needs to have quality ingredients, be delicious, and be able to make it your own. Sorry, I'm looking around the camera. The place needs to be simple, easy, and welcoming. And it all needs to be unique and authentic. So simple and authentic, quality ingredients and authentic, welcoming and unique, delicious and unique. So once you know that, you can then generate your ideas on how you're going to deliver this experience to your target audience. You might come up with an idea like this for a seating area within the place. And now once you've come up with this idea, you can test this idea using based on what people want. So we tested the idea for that space. And if you look at the third green bar, it's lower than the others, and that's welcoming. So that space did not score well on welcoming. So let's go look and see what welcoming is all about. From the research, we know that welcoming, the ideal experience research was about, it's bright, it's got a bright atmosphere, it's clean, it's got a tidy environment, it's comfortable, soft padded seating, it's got a casual atmosphere, it's got happy people in there to serve you and invite you to stay, has entertainment, it's got pleasant sounds, it's got inviting decor on the walls, plants, colorful decor. Personal space, there's outdoor space, it's spacious. So going back to those ratings, we had a concept, we tested the concept, we scored low on welcoming. What did we test? How did that number come into being? So welcoming, everything I just walked you through in welcoming, you see here. The design of the shop feels inviting, the materials make the space feel inviting, design of the shop looks comfortable, the tables look inviting, the seating looks comfortable. We measured that idea on these variables that we know were important to people in their ideal sandwich shop. And so this idea that was measured right here, when you look at those ratings, the tables look inviting. They didn't look inviting. The seating looks comfortable, didn't look comfortable. And the shop's seating area feels spacious. So we know that this idea scored low on those things. We know those are important to people. And then you know how to fix them because you know what people want. So that what we just talked about here is how you define value and then measure value based on what people want in the end. So now you're measuring what really matters to people. You can measure anything, but if you measure what really matters, you can ensure you can deliver the experience people desire. So here it was. This is what comfortable looked like. And if you go back to that picture, you weren't seeing that personal space. So we have the information now to go back and raise those scores if the organization has made the strategic choice that that's what they want to deliver. once you know the desired experience, you can say we're going to do this but not do that. But if you choose, make strategic choices to deliver those things, you know how to do it, how to measure it, and how to ensure you can get there. Now, I realize that this is a very digital world. There's a lot of digital people out there probably watching, and this works for anything. We have used this thinking, and we've seen bathroom vanities. We studied bathroom vanities. It's worked for that. It's worked for printers, electronics, a lot in the automotive industry. It's worked for the study of electric vehicles, all of the screens and interfaces in the vehicle, the interior of the vehicle itself, all the interactions within a vehicle. And there is a bazillion interactions within a vehicle. Apps, but you know, sometimes, is it an app? Is it a service? It's so blurry now. But it's a digital, so you might argue it's the digital delivery of a service, in this case for financial products. And this is on the market now. It's for cryptocurrency. It's called Backed. Spaces. We've done buildings using this approach. This building is just down the street from our office, and it was based on the ideal experience for how to fit into a new emerging community. Interior spaces. And even food, as I've showed you. So, because it's grounded in how people want to feel in an interaction with anything in the world, it applies to anything. So, this idea, ideal experiences. It's the emotional outcome that people desire when they interact with something. It connects what you make to how you make people feel. It's aspirational. It's based on what people wish for. It's actionable. Everyone in the organization knows what to do with the information. You have to make choices in your approach to ensure you get them the information, but it is actionable. You know what to make. And it looks beyond the category of today. So it has a long shelf life. Many of our clients use this stuff 15 years, have been using this for 15 years because it's based on what people wish for. Until people's dreams for the future change, the content and the ideal experience is solid and enduring. So I want to tell you about that. This is our new book, User Experience Research. Just came out yesterday. What I talked about is in there. There you can see the anatomy of the ideal experience framework right there in the book. It's very visual, it's simple, it's easy to read. It's about step one in the design thinking process, as we define it, define value. Many people think this step is optional. It's often shortchanged, skipped, but if it's important, why is it in there? Must be important because it was put in the design thinking process, and we think it's really important. It's the foundation for everything that occurs after. Your prototyping skills could be amazing, but what if you prototype the wrong thing? Doesn't really matter. So the book is about that first step. What I just showed you today was chapter 1 in the book, which is about a new way of looking at design thinking and ideal experiences. Book's built on 6 key principles. Chapter 1 has got 4: aspirational, holistic, actionable, and visual. The book was developed in conjunction with the Savannah College of Art and Design here in the States. And the dean, we were teaching down there, and the dean at the school said he had a certification in things such as 3D modeling software, but he wanted one in upfront user research, generative research, design research, user experience research, call it a bazillion different names. So he wanted a certification. So we worked with him and a professor down there, and she came to our office many times, and we took their existing curriculum and we modified it to do how we do it, how it's done in the book here, the approach, the thinking. And over 4 years of iterative work, we finalized the course, and then we came up with what the certification would be. And the honest truth is, at the last minute, he said, well, what's the certification mean? I was like, yeah, good question. But the book was written, all the stuff in the book, it really boiled down to these 6 things. It's relevant. The research you could do is connected to the business objectives or the company's trying to achieve. If it's a social outcome, it's connected to the outcome you're trying to achieve for society. It's aspirational, it's based on what people wish for. It's holistic, which is really what I just showed you here. You see complete experiences, not just bits and pieces. You see the big picture. It's rigorous, it's pattern-based. It tries to eliminate results due to chance. It's actionable, meaning it inspires you, focuses your creativity, you know what to do. And if you put design and research together, it's got to be visual. It's art and science, basically, is how we think about it. So that's what the certificate's about. As I said, the book came out yesterday. If you go to userexperienceresearch.com, you can check it out and see what it's about. There's a lot of descriptions in there. It's great for practitioners. I mean, the thinking in the book is what we use daily here at Lexington, and it's meant to be applied many different ways. Those principles are not meant to be dogmatic. They're meant to guide your thinking, not tell you what to think, but help you think. And if you're an educator, if you're a professor, if you teach at a university, you can go to wiley.com, you can search user experience research, and you can click on digital edition copy, and you can download a free copy to review to see if you'd like to adopt it. My wife is very passionate about Scandinavian design and Scandinavian culture. She's made a map of all the universities in Scandinavia. I think there's like about 8 or 9 of them. I've looked at the map too. Hopefully you guys will all take a look at it and see if it's something you'd like to teach. If you would, there will also eventually be supporting materials. We developed a whole lot of supporting materials for the Savannah College of Art and Design in the iterative process of learning how to teach the book. So there'll be supporting videos, things of that nature, examples. So I would like to say thank you to everybody for watching. And I would also like to say thank you to Preely for inviting us to speak. We're honored to be here.
You're welcome. And if there's any questions, you are very welcoming to ask them in the QA. I have a couple of questions because I think this is so interesting. As we talked about before we went online, I've worked at Bang & Olufsen here in Denmark, Scandinavian Design. And we actually created, we called it a KPI framework for measuring experiences on the physical products. And the things and the thoughts behind it is very similar to what you just described from the first chapter of the book here. So it's taking the experiences and breaking it down to these key components and then be able to measure on these components. But what we saw was the issue of measuring these components, because of course, in the ideal world, we have, like, for instance, a Bang & Olufsen product, you have some connectivity, you have some interaction, you have sound quality, you have craftsmanship, and so on. And they spoke very much into the overall Bang & Olufsen design philosophy. But then when we started breaking them down, we measured on so many metrics. So being able to have experiences, the participants' experiences connected to them, we needed to ask a lot of questions. So of course, some of it we could do by having performance metrics. So, you know, time on task, did it connect in this amount of milliseconds and all of these things. Mm-hmm. But all the questions. So every time we wanted to just test, for instance, play pause, we'll have 5 questions afterwards, and then we'll have, you know, volume up and down, then we'll have 5 questions again. How do you handle that in this framework? Like, well, having information on each, you know.
Yeah, it's a great question. You have to make choices, because we have these conversations around here all the time. You can test at the emotional level and you're going to have fewer questions. And if you score good on the emotional outcome, you might not want to go further. You can drill down to the next level, the benefit level, and you can test at that level.
Yeah.
Then when you go to the feature level, you have more questions, but you could just test at that level. And then if one feature scores low, like such as the welcoming thing, you could then test in that specific area. So you can make choices at what level you test based on, it all comes down to time and money.
Yeah. Yeah, and how did you weight that? Because well, I can like the issue we had that we wanted to do everything, of course. And the smart thing is, of course, that you have a tool where you can say, okay, where do we actually want to place our resources afterwards? But in order to do that, we needed to test it first. So do you say that, okay, we need to test it, you know, from like an overall perspective, and then we can see something is off here, and then dig in from there?
Well, first, let me address your question of how do you weight it. Many of our clients will take the outcomes of this and validate it in a quant study. And then you can also understand the relative importance of each feature. How important is welcoming in relation to delicious?
Yeah.
And so then you might decide that, well, welcoming is not that important, so we really don't care. Or you may say, another way that our clients use this stuff, once you've quantified it, but you don't have to quantify it. That stuff I showed you wasn't quantified, it wasn't weighted. So each variable had equal weighting.
Yes, yeah.
But clients in the automotive industry have used these experience metrics to compare, to look for white space. So they'll test vehicles, the HMI in the vehicles, see where nobody's doing well, and then use that as an area to focus on and innovate on, since it's a new possibility. So it can be, these can be used many different ways. So I tried to answer your question about weighting, but I know you had another question. What was that one, Tina?
It was more like, how do we start? Because what we saw when we created the framework was the whole starting point. Because when you started to have numbers in, then it was easy to say, okay, we have an issue here. What we saw at that point was a lot about connectivity. We could see, for instance, the interaction that performed beautifully. So we needed to focus our resources into connectivity. But in the first run, there's a lot of stuff that you need to ask each participant in order to figure out, okay, connectivity was, well, maybe quite easy, right? But it had been the interactiveness of the product, then we will be like, okay, we need to measure everything, we need to test everything, and then we can start looking into, okay, this specific area. So it's like, how do you start this? Do you start by going out and just look into this overall experience, and then you start saying, okay, there's something off in this area, and then you start focusing on there, and then you start making the deep dive afterwards? Or how do you handle this?
Well, the first step you would do is you would start by doing the upfront research to define the desired experience in various ways. And there's many ways you can do it. The way we do it a lot is actually born in Scandinavia. It's called participatory design.
Yes.
Or co-creation, some people call it. I mean, co-creation is a really confusing word. I try to avoid it, but it's the word everybody uses. But I prefer participatory design because it's got a philosophy of with, not for. And the user is part of creating with the design team. So, and that's chapter 6, using projective techniques. We use a lot of projective techniques. So that's how you go about defining the desired experience. Then once it's defined, when you're in phase or step 3 and you're generating ideas, the ideas should be focused on what people want. So hopefully you're not going in the wrong direction. Then you would make choices of how to test, what your schedule is. You know, how is it a big thorough quant test? Is this a quick test? There's so many choices that can be made. It really depends on, a lot of it's the culture of the organization. Okay, big automotive companies need large sample sizes to feel comfortable. Some companies like small sample sizes, and they're fine with it. There's no perfect answer for how to choose it, what to test.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because that's always what we're going for, right? Because that's the, I also teach, right? And like the theory is quite simple in design and UX and usability testing and all of these things, but it comes down to the complexity of choice, right? Mm-hmm. And being comfortable in the choices we make. So it's just such an interesting area.
It's all about making choices. But here's an interesting story. One of the clients, one of the examples I showed you, the client, we did many projects for them, and they did a cost benefit analysis. They would used to have to, I call the previous approach guess, test, and repeat. So they would guess at what a package should be.
Yeah.
mock up a whole frozen food aisle, do eye tracking tests,
Yeah.
have low scores, guess again and try again. So they were using that approach, and they started using this desired experience approach, and they found that it reduced the cost by 30% and reduced the time to market by half. So taking the time to do it up front right saves you time and money in the end.
Yeah.
And best of all, their sales were up 30% with millennials, and millennials were not buying frozen food.
Okay, that's also interesting.
So it's faster, cheaper, and yields success.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that's so interesting that you point that out, because I definitely think that we need to have some material out there with more numbers on it. Because that's something that we've looked very much into here, really saying that, okay, if you actually include, like, have a participatory design approach, you have a user-centered design approach, how much can you actually save in the long run? And what we can see is that no such study exists. If some of you behind the screen, if you have numbers on this, please share them, because I've been out like at the different universities here in Denmark and in Scandinavia asking for numbers if they have like research projects and so on. I've worked a lot with industry as well, asking into if they have some insights in if they can see that there is a huge benefit in actually having users included in the beginning of a process. And we always say that, of course, we can save a lot of time. Of course, we can save a lot of money also when it comes to service and maintenance and customer service and so on. But what we have said now is that we're starting to compare numbers from different redesign studies, saying that if the new redesign is actually what they had if they had included the customers, and then we can actually see that there is a huge amount of both time and money in general resources that can actually be spent. But it would be nice to have, these more concrete numbers from very like more focused studies.
Yeah, the numbers we've seen have tended to be, we do a lot of work in the automotive industry, as I was telling you before we got started talking here, because we're 3 hours from Detroit. Honda's here in Columbus, Ohio, in the States. And we've done a lot of usability testing in the automotive industry over the last 10 years. The Chrysler Uconnect, Ford Sync 3, Ford Sync 4. The automotive industry lives and dies by JD Power rankings here in the States. So they saw when they did all this work, their JD Power scores got up high where they needed to be, and it resulted in sales because their JD Power scores were raised. So that's how they measure, and that's where they've seen actual results.
Yeah. That's great. We have a question coming. Does this only work for designers and engineers?
That's a great question. No, it works for everybody. So we've worked with chemists to describe, there's sensory cues of formulation, the viscosity of it, the clarity of it, the way it feels on the skin, food. When a company makes frozen food, it looks like it was made by a big company because the carrots are waffle cut. They don't look like they're cut by a person, all loose and disorganized. It works for everything. It's a methodological thing for how you make it work for everything. It's financial services, it works for, we do that. So it's the way it's in chapter 6, and it's just research methodology choices.
But could you, because one thing is that it works for everybody, but could you see like other people applying it? Because it seems like you need to have this like knowledge around design thinking and so on. So if you don't have any knowledge whatsoever, can you still take it and see like, this is smart, this is easy to approach, this is easy to apply?
Well, you might, you don't have to have knowledge around design thinking, sure, but you're saying like, can a company of any that makes this, that, or whatever, use this thinking to influence what they deliver to the market?
Yeah, both that's one question. And then the other question is, could you see that they actually would take it? Because often what I can see is that you need to see the light in a way. You need to have the epiphany of, okay, this is actually smart to start including customers in our development.
Well, that's a good question. Since I've been doing this, when it started, you had to explain to people back in the 90s why something had to be easy to use. Like, why's it got to be easy to use? Who cares about that? We've gotten over that. Every time there's an economic downturn, it gets more important for some reason. And then after the .com crash, you quit having to explain to people why you needed to do upfront research. After the 2009 event, people embrace it more. And we've looked, there's an explosion in the need for user experience research right now. The world has gone crazy for it. So I got off on a tangent. What was the question again? I was trying to answer.
The question was because I'm completely agreeing with that part, because like companies in the world need the great experience, because now it can't be feature driven. But sometimes we still have, if you don't have in-house people that can see that this is smart, if you have a very engineering heavy company where they're just like, okay, we can create this. So if we can create it, the customers of course also want it. So do you have some good advice on how to actually like, open that door, saying, maybe, okay, it's nice that you can actually do this. It's nice that you have the competencies to make these like very technical solutions, but we need to have the customer and the user into the equation.
Well, yeah, that's still a good question. And when you get into that participatory stuff, it looks and acts kind of weird, and people get a little like, why are you doing this? Is kind of strange, but it works. So over time, for example, we started doing usability in the automotive industry, and now they've begun to adopt more and more of this type of approach. And over time, we've built a portfolio of results, business results, and it's easier to convince people. But typically, if we're talking to them, they're probably interested in it in the first place, because we work with all kinds of companies.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of companies that probably haven't got there yet.
Yeah. Because I think that's the interesting part, right? And I can also see when I teach, I teach in healthcare technology, and I teach UX design, as we talked about before, and it's so interesting to see the progress that the students have over just a course of a semester, because they start up by having the idea that we have some great ideas, we want to have them materialized in the product, and then I say, yeah, that's fine, but is there actually a need for it? Is there a user need for these things? And then they're just like, yeah, of course there is. And then they go out exploring and, interviewing and observing and so on. And then they come back and being like, holy shit, like people don't need this. So we don't need to put in these functionalities into the products. So it's also just something with like, spreading the things and spreading the theory around, like putting the customer or the user in the center, and having, as you said, the participatory design approach to things. So instead of being very feature driven, some companies, especially the very engineering heavy companies, are then having actually to put people in center of what we do. I think it's nice, yeah. And I definitely think that, sir, but I think like a framework, as you pointed out here that you presented, I think that's something that could actually kick down the door to some of these things, because instead of being these fluffy experiences where we just like, oh, we can see a tendency towards something, we have a feeling that we are targeting the right people and so on, having some numbers to it and say, as you point out, okay, we can see here everything is fine except this area, and we can actually see there's something wrong, like in this area, it's especially, like as you said, the welcoming part, right? And then we can make an informed decision about, okay, do we need to do something to actually like rise the rating, or is it okay, are we okay with this? So I think this is very interesting.
Well, you make a good point for what you're talking about. For some reason, human beings love to guess.
Yeah.
They love to guess, and they would rather guess times and get it wrong and rapidly prototype than figure out what people want and get it right the first time. And, exactly. In the introduction to the book, Spencer, who I wrote the book with, he wrote the introduction, and he talks about when he was in design school back in the 80s, professors would tell them that, I think the numbers for roughly 80% of new products fail. And here we are all this time later, and the failure rates have not changed. We've got agile, we've got big data, we've got the internet, but failure rates are still the same. And so many times people want to guess, and you test a guess versus starting with understanding what people want in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. And one thing is like having what they want, but another thing is what they need. So that's definitely like the step further, right? Saying that, okay, you say that you need like this, you need a chair, but I can actually see that maybe you need a sofa instead, right? Because that would actually fulfill the needs you have. So I think that's also such an interesting area, and that's something that I'm met with a lot of the time when I come and say, we need to put the human in the center, and then people say, yeah, but do you think that an iPhone was created if Steve Jobs had went out and asked for what people want, right? So I think that's so interesting to say, yeah, but of course, but we need to talk into the need all the time if that's possible, right? And
The need and the desire, also the desire, what people wish.
Definitely, definitely.
When we were talking earlier, you said you had worked at Bang & Olufsen you were mentioning Harman Kardon. In 1993, I did a project for Harman Kardon, and there's no internet at that time, so much less wireless or anything else. We found out that people wanted music throughout the house and control throughout the house in 1993. And the guy I was sitting next to, he looked at me and he goes, wow, that would be a terabyte. And I was like, what's a terabyte? And here we are now, we're living the dream. Almost 30 years later, we've got music throughout the house and control throughout the house. So it just shows you how enduring understanding desired experiences can be.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. But it's so interesting, right? I actually have a question because I was because you said something about like you look beyond the category of today, and that triggered me because I think this is so hard. So do you have some ideas or some experiences on how you actually do that, like more like in a very like, how do we do it? Because
methodologically, again, how do we do it?
Yeah, but also because like we say here, you had the example of like 30 years ago, like somebody said that this would be nice, and this is like, okay, that's great, right? But how do you actually make sure that you think in new technology, thinking new tendencies, thinking, okay, if you are sitting with something now, what would actually be the tendency like in 5 years time or 10 years time, and try to, I will not say future proof because that's a bit weird, right? But having this like beyond the category of today. So we're not that saying that, okay, we actually had I had a talk yesterday where a guy said, can you remember the mini disc? And everybody, because they were very young, they were just like, no, we don't know what that is. But I think that was interesting, saying that, okay, they had a technology at that point where they had the CDs and they had the mini disc, and then you could not expect, or you could not think that everything will be MP3 and everything will be just put into your phone. So do you have any experiences on like how you actually think beyond technology today, beyond the categories of today as well?
Well, I think the first chapter, if you think about design as problem solving, the first part is problem seeking. And this is problem or opportunity seeking. And you don't ground it in the technology. If you ground it in understanding the desires and what people want to have happen to make those desires come true, you can deliver that in many different ways. If you look at the evolution of how we've gone from wireless speakers, then you had iTunes, but it was only your music. Now you have Spotify and you have everybody's music. You have Bluetooth. Everybody's got a Bluetooth speaker. It used to be you'd have to have like a special home wireless internet thing to get your music to your speaker. And it's all, but so the need has always been there. The desire has always been there. The technology and capability of delivering the desire keeps changing and evolving.
Yeah. I think, yeah, exactly. But I think it's more like maybe, I think like my experience is that we have a tendency to be very, okay, this is how we do it now. So this is how we want to do it in the future as well. So breaking down the ideas and the assumptions that we have, and actually be more open for like things can change. The whole like, okay, like in old times, for instance, we had music on a separate device from everything else, and now we just have, and the same goes for a camera, the same goes for everything, and then now we have everything into the phone. So how do you have any experiences on how we try to break that down? Also, if you go out and actually put the human in center and starting asking what they want, but one thing is what they want, but another thing is what is actually possible. And as you know, the old Ford quote, right? And I don't think it's Ford that said it, but if you ask people what they wanted a faster horse. So actually breaking down that barrier saying that, okay, you want this, but you know, now I'll give you this because I know better.
Well, you know, we wanted to name the book A Faster Horse. That
Is
was
that
like,
right?
yeah, but we advice from our publisher and others said that that's not a good idea. And the reason we wanted to name it was because what he said, if I'd asked people what they wanted, they'd have said a faster horse.
Yeah.
But if you'd ask people to describe their ideal experience of going from the saloon back to your house, people would have talked, you could easily talk about, well, I want to stay dry. I don't want to have to deal with a horse because horses are the pain. I don't want to have to clean up after a horse. I don't want to have to feed a horse. You could, but the way you could solve for it before combustion engines was way different than you can solve for it now. So those desires were always there. And you don't ask people what to make. You ask, people can imagine, everyone has dreams for the future. They can describe what needs to happen for those dreams to come true. And they can describe how they want that delivered, but they don't tell you what to make. You decide what to make. I think that's the big difference.
Yeah, but I think this is such a great point, actually. And I think I actually think I might use that quote when I speak with especially students, because the whole idea of saying what people want compared to what needs they actually have. And I think this is a very good example on this, and say, yeah, maybe if they have had one sentence, they will see a faster horse. But if you actually dug into the needs, they will be they want to transportation from A to B, and they want to have it safe. It should be convenient and all of those things, right?
Yes.
So I think that's, and that's actually quite nice. But I love the idea of like starting to be able to dig into the experiences. So instead of being this, we have a tendency to have it very fluffy, right? Especially like saying that, okay, we want this experience, and then everybody's just like, if I say this type of experience, then you'll say the same, but we'll not agreeing if we actually start digging into what we actually mean and so on. So starting breaking it down to have this like micro, I don't know what the word should be, if it's should we call it micro experiences or like micro, I don't know, metrics that we can measure, or like which type of language do you have around this breaking down the experience?
Well, I think, you break it down to those component parts. What's it going to do? It's going to be safe. It's going to be organized. And then what does that look and act like in the five senses? It is breaking it down. And you were talking at the beginning about use cases. All of these have to be grounded in use cases. Some people call them jobs to be done, which is really another word for use cases, occasion, context, all that. That's important too. And that's in chapter 8.
Oh, damn, that's cliffhangers. This one, I can hear that. I need to buy the book, so I definitely need to dig into the different things. But I think that's nice. So everyone, like, you can ask questions in the Q&A section. I can see that. Can you share the name of the book again? A bit of commercial.
User experience research. Discover what customers really want. It's available everywhere. And it came out yesterday. So if you please write a review, if you happen to read it, we would love for you to write reviews.
Yeah, that sounds great. But I think like if we don't have any more questions, then we'll just start a bit earlier. But I think it's interesting, and again, I love the idea of breaking things down as you have done. So I'm definitely looking forward to reading the book, because when you just make the presentation, I was just like, oh, it aligns so much with some of the ideas that I have worked with in the past. So I'm very much looking forward to your approach on that topic. So
thank you so much, Tina, for the invitation. I really appreciate it. And again, thank you to everybody for listening in.
Yeah, and great that people were joining. We actually have like a bank holiday tomorrow, so we were a bit afraid that people will not join, because we have a tradition of eating some white bread with a lot of butter this afternoon. So I know people will be with their families. So I actually say, like, enjoy your vidder, we call them in Danish, with a lot of butter.
Hey, were the translations correct?
No, it actually wasn't. We call it oplevelser. Yeah, so what you saw, but it's actually the same word in English because erfaring, as you pointed out, that's actually if I have experience with a job, for instance, then I have job experience and then we have oplevelse. So if I have an experience with my phone, that would be an oplevelse. So almost right.
Well, I knew I was taking a chance on doing that.
Yeah, but I think that was nice, and also because the Scandinavian languages are a bit like tricky in general. So I think you were very bold.
Well, thank you.
Very bold.
You know, whenever we do global research, we always get our translations verified because nothing's worse than showing up in a country with the wrong translations.
Exactly, and yeah, I think as a UX we have tried these things countless times, right?
Yes.
Awesome. But I think then thank you very much for your talk. I think it has been very, very interesting. And for those of you who are still behind the screen, you're more than welcome to reach out to us here at Preely for more information about the different solutions that we have around remote unmoderated testing and also testing of or hosting of user panel as well. And as I said in the beginning, that we have recorded the talk, so you will receive a recording of the talk during the next week, together with Marty's slides. So I think that was it. So thank you for now. Thank you for joining, and have a great day to you, Martin, and have a great evening to those of you in Europe.
Thank you.
Awesome. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.